So what's up, everybody? We are going to do kind of a video podcast here. We decided not to go live just because the video quality when we went live here last time was pretty bad. So we just wanted to kind of go through and recap Hunter's hunt and then the hunt we had yesterday and just kind of talk about our late season and how it's gone so far. And we've got my buck from this year back from the Euro mount guy. You probably can't see it because of the mic here, but it's done and it looks good. And it was a heck of a way to get a Euro mount. It was $60 and we didn't have to do it. So
that's the best way.
That's the best way. So I guess we'll just start out. If you guys haven't already done so, make sure you go check out our podcast that we've done. We've got a couple episodes out. And just kind of go check it out and show us some love. I think we only had like 40 downloads, and I think 39 of them are from me looking at them. So make sure you go check them out. So I guess we'll just start out by talking about your hunt on your public land giant that you got.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you guys have any questions, even though this isn't live, just post them in the comments. We answer every single comment we get. So just post them down below and we'll answer the questions. But I guess we'll start out with my hunt. And I had a pretty short muzzleloader season. I got my tag on Sunday, the day before the opener, which was Monday, the 17th. And I hunted Monday morning, Monday afternoon, well, basically just 2 full days. And I killed him at the end of the second day. And so it was a crazy couple days of hunting. I started out on our farm. I went in just because I didn't want to. I had some new public areas that I wanted to check out, and our whole kind of what we were keying in on, especially on public land, is finding areas that we didn't think had been pushed during the shotgun season
Or pressured.
Yeah. If a lot of guys probably aren't familiar, but during the Iowa shotgun seasons, I'd say probably like
a majority,
80-90% of the hunting comes in the form of pushes, whether they're small, large, but it relies on getting the deer moving. And I mean, there's a good reason for that.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, this time of December, unless you have like good food sources, it's going to be a little bit harder to hunt them, or a good bedding area, and everything around you might be receiving pressure. Then you can really have some good hunts too. But like, especially like with the weather we've had, like, the deer aren't going to be moving that much, and so that's why a lot of people push.
Yeah, it's been a really weird. November was super cold.
And then it warmed up.
And it's been rainy, and it's been a really weird year.
50s yesterday when we killed your buck.
Yeah.
So that's why people do it, and you get a lot of deer up on their feet. But we're trying to find areas that didn't get that, because obviously the natural deer movement is going to be a little bit better in those areas that haven't been pressured like that and been kicked around. So that's kind of what we were keying in on, and I had some new areas I wanted to check out, but I decided to go to our farm first and try to get the Big 7 one last time, because I didn't want to go into new areas in the dark. I've done it before, and
it's not fun.
It's a little stressful.
It's not as bad if you like. I wanted to key on public land areas like late season, once all like the leaves have fall off the trees and stuff, because it's a lot.
You had a gun in your hand.
Yeah, you had a gun in your hand, but it's a lot less.
20 yards.
Yeah, it's a lot less intimidating when you go in during late season, because the leaves are falling off for the most part and everything, and it's just more open. So I'd much rather go in during the mornings and stuff during late season than like October or something,
right?
Just because you can see better and you can access stuff better, but it still sometimes could be a public land train wreck. So
yeah, like I've gotten to new areas, and the real problem is this is our first year down here. We just moved into a new area, and like I said in your video, most of our hunts, I'd say over 50% of my hunts this year have been in public land areas. First time in, I haven't really hunted the same spot twice, and I think I have, I guess, a few times, because I figured out that was kind of hurting me, bouncing around too much. I talked about that in my video a little bit. But I did a lot of bouncing around, a lot of new areas. I hunted a lot of new areas, and a lot of times I hadn't even driven around the area, let alone even stepped foot on it. So I had this one hunt in October where I get there, and it looks great on the maps. And you can pick out good spots to hunt on the maps. But the problem is going in the mornings when you've never been there, it can be an absolute nightmare. I got to this one spot in October with my buddy Jack, and we couldn't get out of the parking lot. I mean, it was a wall of brush and like
stickers and stuff.
I haven't been back, but at some point I'm gonna go back during the daytime and see, because I bet it's keeping a lot of people out, and if we can find a way around it, then it'll be good. But it was just insane how thick it was. There's no access path. I mean, you literally couldn't get out of the parking lot. There's no way.
And we talked about going back to that place.
Yeah, but during the gun season.
Yeah, and hunting yesterday and stuff this weekend. We talked about going back there, but we just didn't get time to go back there.
We're gonna have to go there in the morning or wait till the afternoon.
Right.
We might have been able to go yesterday afternoon. We killed your buck in the morning. So yeah, I was trying to hunt new areas, but I decided to give our farm one last try before I started keying in on public land. And the reason I wanted to key on public land was just because we don't have good food sources on our farm this year, and we don't have very many.
We don't have like a buck we want to shoot.
Yeah, our management goals on our farm are pretty strict. Like if we can manage we don't try to manage public land. We use them for how we want. I killed a 1-year-old on public this year. He killed a 2-year-old yesterday, a 2 or 3-year-old. And like you get out there and use them, but on our farm we're gonna manage a little bit more, just because we have the opportunity to. And
get the best of both worlds, you know.
Yeah,
like
I mean, we want to
eventually.
I like to shoot. I like to chase big deer. I think that's like really fun.
But at the end of the day, I still want it to be fun too, because we had like some of the most fun yesterday, in that one hunt we did. You know, compared to like, there's been times and it can get super frustrating when you're just going out and we're targeting this one deer, or it's like, well, we don't have any deer on the farm that's big enough to shoot yet, because we want to try to shoot a big deer. But no, none of these deer are essentially big enough, so it just doesn't make it as fun or old enough or whatnot. So, I mean, it's always fun to just get best of both worlds, go to public, have a lot of fun, and then also next year still hit it hard, try to grow and manage our own big buck. So we can kind of just chase the best of both worlds here.
Yeah, I mean, luckily we have a lot of public land around here, and it's been a blast moving to this area. So anyway, but we have a couple mature bucks that we were targeting this year. And we've seen the Big 7 a few times. I'd say he's the most patternable mature buck.
Right.
The only one that we've seen consistently. Seemed like he had 9 lives. So I tried to go in one last time for him that first morning and saw a couple little bucks, but didn't see him. Backed out. Decided to try this new area of public land. It was a long drive, almost an hour away.
So what made you choose that area, I guess? Because everybody can watch the video, you know? What made you decide to go to that area out of all the other places?
Well, I guess I really like the habitat. It's a lot of big timber surrounded by ag, but within that big timber there's a lot of brushy bottoms. So really diverse habitat, and I really like keying on that. I mean, I know there's bucks in just big timber areas, but it just seems like there's a lot more deer total and a lot more big bucks in areas that are just super diverse. And I really like keying in on brushy bottoms for bedding in that type of habitat. I really like that.
Right.
And it just seems like I have a great hunt in that scenario. And there's a lot of that type of habitat up there. And it's also, there's like 3 just huge chunks of public up there and no major cities. It looked like I could get off the beaten path and looked like I was going to be able to escape the pressure. And that's kind of why I keyed in on it, I guess. I just really liked the habitat, and it looked like I could escape some of the pressure because they were big areas. And then, more specifically, it was a huge area, and I noticed that there was this one little outcrop that I thought could be good. And I had a suspicion that, like, okay, a lot of people are going to be seeing these areas, and like I've noticed a lot of people, when they get to the public land area, they're like, just want to go all in and go as far back in as they can, which I used to do that. I still do. We did that yesterday.
Yeah, we did that.
It worked. It was good. It was a good strategy. But like in this area, I could tell that like there's this huge chunk, and there's going to be people like, oh, I got to get as far away from the road as possible, and they're going to go in the center of it, and a mile and a half deep, and like a lot of times they'll be walking by a bunch of good hunting.
Yeah. But
then you still have people that are
hunting.
They're hunting near the road too. But then there was this little portion that was like just across the road from the main part, and I'm like, I bet that gets less pressure than the main part of it, just because people are going to overlook it. And then beyond that, you could still get about a mile in that little outcrop, but then you get so. The place that I hunted was about half a mile, or I guess it was 3/4 of a mile, but it was like you had to go up and then you had to turn and go into this little corner of the public land. And so you either get those guys that are hunting close to the road, or you get the guys that are going as far back as they can. It seems like a lot of time. And so if I make that turn, it seemed like I could get kind of in that middle ground and find that sweet spot. And it worked out really well. I mean, like thinking back, like it makes a lot of sense. I'm glad I checked that area out. Then it was surrounded by a lot of food sources, I could tell. It was a brushy bottom. I knew the deer would be bedding in there. I haven't mentioned it, but the Onyx maps were the key to this. I mean, if I wouldn't have had the Onyx maps, I wouldn't have killed these deer.
With their entire season, that's been kind of our success factors.
And, like, because you can look up public land, private land, everything, but when you have it all in one place, you can...
It's easy.
It's way easier to just find new places to hunt. It takes way less time. You can scout a bunch of areas online in the time that it would take you to find one area if you didn't have the map. So...
It's been a key so far. And
I don't think I'd have made it to that spot this season if I didn't have the Onyx maps, so I wanted to mention that. And anyway, I got up there that afternoon. And to add to why it was a good area, it was a level B road taking me down in there. And I have an off-road truck, and I didn't even want to drive down it. I was like, I'm going to get stuck. I can't do this. And I'm sure all of the shotgun seasons are 3 weekends long, and I'm pretty sure the last two... The second and the third weekend, I don't think anyone could drive down that road.
The first weekend, remember? The first weekend, it was like, it was rainy and bad. It was like big storm. So I think the whole entire time... They
had tire tracks in, like people had done it, but I knew like...
You were down here by yourself,
if you didn't have like an off-road truck. So like that would like eliminate a lot of the pressure too. And so that was one way in, and I ended up... I was like, well, I'll just go to the main part of the unit. Like, it's a big area. I'm sure there's big bucks in there. So I drove all the way around it. There was a car in the parking lot that I was going to go to next. That was my backup plan. And, I mean, it's like 3,000 or 4,000 acres, and there's like one car. But I was like, well, I was like, whatever. So I just kept driving. I was like, I'll see if there's another way in before I try to... Because I was getting in late and didn't want to mess this guy's hunt up. And so I drove down the other way, and it was still a level B road taking me in that way. But it was a little bit better than the other side, and I was able to get close. And I was at least parked on some public, and then I had to walk the road in the rest of the way, and then actually turn off into the land. So I finally get down to this bottom, and it was like 4 already or something. It was pretty late, and I was rushing, and it was crunchy because it's been freezing and thawing, and the leaves were crunchy and stuff. And I heard a deer get up, and so I just threw up my binos, and I caught a glimpse of him. It was a shooter buck. I don't know. I think it was like an 8-point or something. I just caught a quick glimpse of him, and it was definitely one that I was going to shoot. It wasn't like a giant, but it was a nice buck. And I was like, well, and so he had heard me coming but never seen me, and basically he just trotted a few yards, and then I saw him walking away, and about the lightest bump you can have. So I knew he was going to be back in there the next morning.
And I think, like, I always kind of get upset, like I'm walking in, it's like super loud, you know? But like yesterday when we were hunting, you'd be surprised on like, even though it may sound loud to you, like if you're going slow and you're going like heel toe and you're like you're being conscientious of trying to stay quiet, it doesn't actually sound that loud like 10 yards away,
right?
You know, so I think that's, I mean,
like what we had like a group of like 30 deer come in after that. If they're in like, even if they're not in that big of groups, but when they're in groups, like a lot of times they are in late season, they have deer walking around them like
constantly
all the time.
So they have to make noise,
noise like that.
Yeah.
So if you're 200 yards away or 100 yards away, and they're on their feet is the big thing. It's like a lot of times you can get away with a little bit of noise, and they won't spook, or they'll spook less hard or something like that. And so but
I mean, you don't want to just be running through there, obviously, unless you know that you don't plan on having any deer in that area, you know.
Right. This buck was bedded down, so I think that's why it made him a little nervous. But I ended up going all the way into the bedding area just to get a feel for it, because I knew I was going to be back the next morning. And I went in there. I didn't end up going to the spot. I ended up hunting the other end of the field, but I could basically see over there, and I knew what I was getting into, at least for the morning hunt. I knew my access, and I knew I had to be in there before anything else was in there, or else I was going to spook it out, just like I did that evening. But I knew that buck was going to be back, and I actually think I might have seen that buck the next day and passed him. But so anyway, didn't see anything the rest of the night, and then got out of there, decided that I was gonna have to make the extra long drive in the morning, get up super early. I got in there a full hour before I could even shoot. I like set up a full hour, not even just in the bedding area. I got up at like 3:30. It was stupid, but I just wanted to go all in that day, and I did. Didn't spook anything. Got in there. As it was getting light, I was like amazed at what I was hearing. There was grunts, chasing. I could hear multiple different bucks all around me, and then there was a big group up in front of me where I expected them to be coming back from the food, and they just kept working closer and closer and closer. And now it's like easy shooting light. It's getting pretty light, and I can see them moving through the trees, like glassing, trying to run the camera. I can see big flashes of antler. I know there's like several different bucks, and this is going on for 15 minutes or so in the light. And finally, one of the bucks pops out, and I think it might have been that same 8-pointer from the night before. And I almost shot him because I didn't know. I was like you would have shot him yesterday. I would have shot him
that day.
But I knew there were other bucks in there, and I had a feeling that there was a huge one because one of the grunts was a lot deeper, and I could see flashes of like big antler. So I passed him at like 60 yards. He had popped out of the brush into the field. And then a few minutes went by. The big buck might have actually been an opening. There's so many deer that I couldn't like keep track of it all. And after like reviewing the footage, I might have been able to get a shot on him. And this is literally the biggest buck I'd ever seen. And it, like on public or private land, I've hunted a lot. And I think probably the biggest buck I've ever seen while hunting. I mean, he's pushed probably 180 or something like that. Just like stupid big.
Right.
Just skyscraper G2s and 3s, big frame. And so he ended up chasing the doe around still. He actually mounted the doe briefly, and I could have shot him. I had him in my scope, and then I could tell that he was about to step in the opening, and he was about to mount the doe, and I think I moved the camera, and I think he had been like on top of her because that was the only way I could have been able to see him. And then right as I was like getting the crosshairs on him again, he dropped down back into this brushy field, so I couldn't get a shot. And then it was going to open up a little bit for about, I was going to have like a 20-yard opening, but all of a sudden he just sprinted the doe through there, so no shot. I tried stopping him. There's not a chance. So him and the doe actually crossed the creek and went and bedded down. And I thought they bedded down. It was so loud, like I mentioned, that I thought I heard him bed down because I heard him stop. And so I was like, I can't leave this buck. Like, I really want this deer, and I can't just leave him. And so
you had no food, no water.
I had 1 cup of water and 1 protein bar.
Right.
And I was like, I just got to hunt all day. It'll be fine. And so I stayed there. Ended up seeing another shooter come from where that rutting activity was. And I ended up spooking the other deer because I was trying to grunt and make a little bit of noise to get that big one to come in because he was running off all the other bucks anyway. And I figured he might come back and give me a shot. But he had already crossed the creek and was committed with that doe. Anyway, I spooked the other deer. And then later in the morning, I saw another shooter up on that ridge. So I was like, I knew that it was still a good spot. And around 11:30, my patience wore off, and I started second-guessing myself. And I decided I needed to get a little bit closer to this monster. That way, if he stood up out of his bed and went a different direction, I could maximize my chances of getting an opportunity at him. And I think that's kind of dumb because a lot of times, he's going to be just attached to the hip to that doe, and that doe is probably going to come out the same way she did that morning. And I think if I would have just sat there, I probably would have gotten him that night. I gave it a really good chance. But I ended up trying to get a little bit closer. And I don't know if I bumped the doe and didn't bump him, or if it was just sheer coincidence and the doe ran off and he was looking for her. But I think I might have bumped him. I ended up seeing him for about 5 minutes total, and he had trotted about 20 yards and stopped and walked. And he was in range, but again, no shot, too much brush. But I got some good film of him. I saw him go up the ridge, and I figured he just bedded down on top there. So I was pretty devastated, talk about lowest of lows. And I just ended up kind of sitting there for a while and just thinking. And I remember I tried to take a nap midday. There was nothing going on in the midday. And then at like 2, I decided I would go back and get right in the center of that rutting activity in the morning. Because if I didn't spook the buck and I only spooked the doe, there's still a good chance that doe is going to come right back through. you've had does. You've spooked the same doe like 4 times and had her just come right back on the same trail. If they want to get to an area bad enough, they're just going to keep coming back.
Yeah, they're going to hope that you're something different or you've moved or something like that. You know, does don't really, they don't get as spooked as hard. Like if you spook a buck,
they just won't leave.
Yeah, if you spook a buck, and he knows it was a person or something, he's going to be gone. If he gets spooked a little bit and he's like, I don't know what's going on, he'll stick around, but it won't do it the same day.
Right. So I thought there's a good chance that buck and that doe would come right back through anyway. And I knew that there were other shooters in that area, so they could be right around the same spot. So I swallowed my pride, went back up there, didn't see a single deer until 4:30. I had little bucks pushing does around up in the same spot. And then I'm like, okay, it's still a good area. I'm like, I don't think I boogered him too bad. I'm planning for the next day, thinking I'm going to come right back in. And all of a sudden I see legs walking through the brush. So I flipped the camera on, zoom in a little bit, and from the time I saw his legs to the time he was stone cold dead, it was literally less than 5 seconds. But I saw his rack, and he's just a giant buck, huge 10-pointer with a sticker he ended up being. And I saw him. I had about 5-step opening up in the woods there where he was standing. I was still in the field, and he took a few steps. I said screw it to the camera. It was on and in focus. It was going to be actually a pretty good kill shot, self-filmed. But by then he was literally his head was behind the backside of my opening. If he took any more steps, I wasn't getting shot. So I stopped him and pulled up the gun. And when I pulled up the gun, I ended up bumping the camera, as you've seen if you watch the video. But I just pulled it up, the cross was right on him, and then squeezed the trigger, and he was down. Just dropped him.
Yeah.
So
go make sure you go and check out the video if you haven't already done so, and you can watch the entire thing he just talked about. But I just wanted to, you can kind of recap your strategy for that. Like you talked about the maps, and then let's talk about your haul out of there.
Yeah.
Because I got a little bit of light on the video, but.
Well, first, honestly, I think so the key was strategy for finding that area, and then in the hunt, making that final adjustment back up to that spot. And I was about 60 yards from where I was in the morning, but making that little adjustment was the difference. I wouldn't be able to get a shot at him if I didn't make that final adjustment. So that was a big key, is you got to move and adjust to where they're if you get lucky, and the reason there was a little bit of rutting activity down there, or actually a lot of rutting activity, is because I think all those deer were just stacked back in there. And when you get an area where it's a really high density of deer, you really up your odds of finding the first hot doe or the last hot doe. And when you do that, you just find yourself in a pile of bucks. It's pretty awesome. So I guess that was kind of the key strategy in there. And by the way, it ended up being a different buck than the one I saw this morning, so that just kind of shows how many bucks
were in that area.
Were in after, and there must have been just a bunch of extra scent in there, I guess, just pulling them all in. And I got lucky and found the right spot
at the right time.
Yeah, if you hunt enough, you're gonna get lucky eventually like that. So.
I mean, you went back in there with Jesse.
And it was ghost town.
And it was a ghost town.
And I think it might have been because I boogered it so bad. I hunted it for 2 days, spooked a lot of deer, and then on the drag out, I must have spooked every deer in that county. It seemed like
really,
because they kept coming back and they were rutting around, and then they'd get so close and they'd spook and cause a commotion.
Because you can touch on that too. You had to haul that deer out by yourself.
Yeah, so it's my biggest
without a deer cart because he always forgets the deer cart.
Yeah, I just didn't want to load it up, but. I don't think it would have helped me that much in that area. I couldn't have done it on that hill anyway, and the rest of it was downhill. So, but yeah, my biggest buck, and then I was all alone. They had to go back to work, so it was all me. And I just I remember after I killed him, and I was really excited, but then I was just holy cow! I got close to 3/4 of a mile drag out in here, and it's this. There's this one massive hill. It's a 200-foot elevation gain, and I mean, it's muddy. It's I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I just grabbed onto him and started pulling. It took me 3 or 4 hours. So finally got it out. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done. So,
but it's a good feeling when you do that, you know?
Yeah, you finally get to the end, you see the truck.
It's I love the truck, man. I love that truck.
I love that truck. Even if it is a Chevy.
But, I think that's pretty cool. And then I remember when you were sending us the videos and photos and stuff of those deer, I'm like, I want to go right back in there and try to get after that buck. But I never went in there once. Right. Like, during this entire late season.
It's a hard spot to hunt. It takes an east wind, which is really, like, it has to be some form of...
Or a south wind would probably work good, too. I hunted on a
south wind, but it was at first a southeast. So it's a hard spot to hunt just because you don't know where the deer are going to come from, and you just have to take your chances. And on the south wind, I set up on the south end of the field, and basically I knew there was a good chance that deer were going to get downwind of me, but I just set up so I could shoot my downwind side. So if anything...
That's a big positive when you have a gun in your hand.
Right.
So
definitely something to key on.
And something we talked about, too, was yesterday with my deer. It's like, I mean, I've hunted from the minute that I could, late season, until almost the last day. Today would have been my last day. I would have been able to hunt for a while. Mm-hmm. And I would have only gotten a morning hunt in. And it's almost like sometimes it's harder. Like, I know a lot of times it's like, oh, yeah, gun season, you get that extended range, blah, 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 right? But it's easier. Yeah, it should be easier, right? But like when you're hunting public land and stuff, it's almost like harder than bow hunting.
For sure.
Because one, you don't have like... If you do have a secondary rut as hard as Hunter did, maybe it's a little bit different. But like a majority of the time, you're not going to have that rut. The bucks have been extremely pressured. Mm-hmm. They've had people in there all of gun seasons, and they've been pushed around. So either they're just bedded up all day long, and they're only moving at night, or they're dead, Mm-hmm. So, I mean, there's a good chance...
And they'll move a little bit during the day, but like what we said, we're new to this area, so if we don't know exactly where they're bedding, and we don't yet...
We haven't found any, yeah.
We can predict where they're going to be bedding based on, like, the maps. I think we can predict it pretty well, but, like if it's warm in the late season now and they've been pressured all year, like, they might only get 50 yards from their bed during shooting time.
Right.
So it's like you could be 100 yards off and not even see them.
Or like us yesterday. I mean, they could be bedded right above you and you would never know it
buck
until...
was right above us the whole morning.
Right, and you would have never known it until you did kind of push them a little bit, get them moving. So...
Yeah, you can dive into your hunt now.
Yeah, but I wanted to say, like, bow hunting if you have the rut and stuff, of course you have the limited range compared to a gun, but I think you have more chance at better opportunities because you have, I mean, especially here in Iowa, you have deer that are less pushed, you have
less pressure,
more natural movement,
for sure.
And obviously you have the rut, so deer are going to be running everywhere. And so, I mean, I hunted really hard for late season, and I went out one day in this area, and I was keen.
The first day you almost killed?
Yeah, the first day I went out to this brand new spot because I was looking at this place on a map. I'm like, man, this has got to be good. And so I was like, I'm going to go in there and give it a shot. I was all by myself, and I was trying to do self-filming too, which is almost, it's not impossible when you're set up in a tree stand to do like a self-film hunt.
Right.
But self-filming, like moving on the ground and like being extremely mobile while self-filming is next near impossible to get good footage in to kill an animal. I mean, it can be done, right? But if you're set up in one area and you like kind of have everything figured out and where you're at, but like at this point I was like walking in. Mm-hmm. So I had the gun on my shoulder, I had the camera on the tripod, and I was carrying it, and I always have it set up to where if I see something, I'm going to set it down and either be able to finick around and turn it on. But I went into this place, and I don't think we'll ever have any footage of it because I saw these deer running down the hill, so I put the camera down and I tried to get it ready, and there were just 3 does running. They're running at me, and I'm like, well, I didn't spook them because they're running at me. And then 20 seconds later, there's 2 other deer coming. I'm like, that second one looks like a buck. So here I am trying to get the gun off my shoulder, and it's caught on my bag. And I see this 150-plus buck. He comes running straight at me, and I'm trying to get my gun off my shoulder. And I got the camera down. I try to flip it out to turn it on, and it knocks the camera over. And I'm just like trying to get the gun. And by the time I get the gun, he's standing there looking at me.
20 yards.
25 yards. And I'm like, this is stupid.
Behind
what?
Him, you can't shoot him where he's looking.
Yeah, because there's this huge brush pile right in front of me. And so I'm just sitting there like, you gotta be joking me. So like I got the gun ready, and as he starts to moving, I like, and I tried to like peek around it to see if I could shoot. but he was running straight away, and I'm not taking a running shot.
Right.
And he was gone, and then sure enough, here comes a coyote, and then behind him there's dogs chasing, like there's a dog chasing deer around. Somebody's dog must have gotten loose, and he was just barking, and
Yeah,
I was like, crazy. It was crazy, and I didn't know what else to do that day. And I'm like, there goes my chance, like
just blew the whole bedding area.
You're right. There goes my hunt for one, and then I'm like, how many chances is a guy gonna get late season at a really big buck?
Well, like turns out
one, because I hunted like every other day, and I found piles of does. Like I saw at least one doe every single day. With the most, I think it was like 10 does in one area.
We saw like 30.
Then we saw 30 yesterday.
It was crazy.
And in one group, 30 yesterday. Yeah, that's true.
There were so many deer, it was nuts.
It was ridiculous. And I would be able to find all these does, but I could just never find the bucks. Mm-hmm. And I mean, that's just kind of how late season goes. It could either be really good or it could be usually late season is going to be pretty hard too. Mm-hmm. And sorry, we had a little bit of camera that looked like it was about to die, so I had to plug it in. But to kind of just go back to that, I mean, I was really hunting hard on bedding areas and where we thought there'd be a high density of deer. And I kind of touched on some areas.
Focusing on trying to find areas that hopefully didn't get pushed too hard and trying to escape pressure.
But, I only saw that one big buck, and then I saw like a group of 3 little bucks one night. And they were like, it was the weirdest thing I ever seen. There's these bucks, this one specific buck, they'd go and they'd spar. And then he'd run around, he'd like throw his head around. And I think for sure he was trying to get rid of an antler.
That's like crazy.
I'm like dead set that deer was trying to drop one of his antlers and it was bugging him. But they ended up coming in at like 5 yards from us. And
now that's a smart deer. If I drop my antlers, they won't shoot me.
Yeah, that is smart. And I've seen a lot of people who've been posting pictures of deer bucks that have shed. So I was like, what would happen if I saw a gigantic buck with one antler? Or like you shoot him and you start dragging him and his antlers pop off. That was kind of like, that could happen. But I was just kind of going in and learning new areas. And I'm glad I did because I learned a lot. And I learned places that I want to hunt next fall and places I really don't care to hunt again during the other times. And some areas that it would work okay. I just have to go back in and learn more. So I never went back to the same area that he hunted. I really wanted to go in and see if I could.
It's a long drive.
Yeah, that's what killed me was the long drive. Even though I found another place that was another solid 50 minutes away, 45 minutes away that we hunted yesterday. But it just kind of, I always like to keep looking for new places because we found that area that your buck was in. So in my head it was like, cool, there's going to be big bucks in there. But I still want to keep trying new areas. That way we have more places to go. Right. So, I mean, I knew people would be like, why didn't you ever go back in there? And that's the reason why. Because I wanted to try to find a second honey hole. That way we had a bunch of different options. And I think a big thing was you guys went back in there the next day, I think it was.
Yeah, we just did a quick morning. No, it wasn't the next day. It was like 4 days after. And so, probably, whatever doe was in heat was
gone. Yeah.
So, and then that combined with me, I mean, I left ground scent everywhere in there. And, I mean, I'm sure, just that combination of, a bunch of ground scent and me spooking a bunch of deer that night, and then the fact that there was no doe in there anymore, they probably left it for, a week or so.
Right.
I don't know. I mean, and they could have still been in there. We could have just missed them. One thing I was talking about too is I'm starting to learn that I did a lot of bouncing around and I almost bounced around too much, and that I was kind of trying to not put pressure on these areas, but through this hunt and kind of what I've been thinking is if you want to do that, try to avoid putting too much pressure on an area, but still get a good survey of what's in the area and have a good chance. I think it makes a lot more sense to start going into an area, hunt it for 2 or 3 days straight. Maybe do a little bit different setups, but same bedding area or something maybe.
And that's what I tried during all my late season. I'd pick a spot and I'd stick to it,
hunt it,
and then I'd move, and then I'd stick to another one, and then I'd move.
Because you put a little bit of pressure in that area for that 2 or 3 days, but then if you don't go in for a couple weeks, I almost think it's better than going in once a week and then putting a little bit of pressure in there consistently is like almost worse than just focusing your pressure. And when you hunt it for only like one day a week
or a morning,
like one morning, like
it could be better in the afternoon, right?
Yeah, like are you really getting a survey of what's in that? Like you have to hit it at the exact time if you do that. And if you keep just doing that in a bunch of different areas, you leave yourself just going in by chance every single time, and you're basically relying on getting lucky.
Right. But and when we go in,
because like when you killed your buck, like we didn't see him that morning, but he was right there. Like he was right on top of the ridge we were sitting on. So like that's just an example of that too, where it's like I think you need to apply a little bit of pressure consistently for a couple of days, really get a survey of what's in the area,
right,
and let everything move that's going to move. Like just try to optimize your chances.
Right. And when we say like hunting that same area, we don't mean you have to sit in the exact same spot either.
Right.
You know, like because you're gonna have different winds, you're gonna have different weather and stuff. You know, I mean, you pick the same unit, the same property, and you want to hunt this specific bedding area or this area that you think looks good. You just kind of hit it from different angles too. I think that's a good point to put out that way, because I mean, one spot's not going to be good that entire 3 days. You're not going to have one spot that's optimized in the morning and optimized at night. Or in the afternoon. That really doesn't happen that often, you know. So you got to make sure you pick your spots for the morning and you pick your spots for the afternoon in that same general area.
Jeff Sturgis talks about that a lot, where he like rates his stands for the best morning spot. He like talking about like hunting all day. Like you could hunt all day in the same area, and that'd be a good strategy. But
if you're in the right pinch point,
there's rarely a stand that is in a good all day spot. So he like rates all his stands. Like what is this going to be? Like a 7 out of 10 in the morning, like a 2 out of 10 in the day, and then like another 7 out of 10 in the night. When like an all day sit stand would be like he'd want it to be as high as those ratings on each of those different categories, or else he would rather hunt all day but then make small adjustments during the day to stands that are optimized.
Right.
So, yeah. And then so you could do that all season too, just bounce around the same bedding area or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
And that might be a good strategy too, depending on how aggressive you are and how you do it.
Right. I kind of lost my train of thought there.
Yeah, we're talking about hunting.
So then, so we'll just kind of recap yesterday's hunt where we ended up shooting buck deer.
Mm-hmm. First time we hunted together all season.
Yep. And so
took one day.
It only took one day. And we were going back and forth on the maps before hunting because we didn't know if we wanted to go back to where he shot his deer, but in a different part of the unit, or if we wanted to go to this place that I went to one day last weekend, I think it was. Mm-hmm. I picked it out on a map, and I'm like, this is going to be good because there's
morning and night.
Yeah, it was ag everywhere. It looked like it was going to have a pile of deer in there. There's a bunch of different habitat changes. I'm like, this place has got to be good. So
and you can get like dang near 2 miles.
You can get deep, and it's
even the
pretty
diehards that are like, oh, I'm going to get the deepest in there. Like even the diehards, most of those are going to be weeded out at this specific part of this property that.
And it could have been good there, and that guy who had that stand there is probably smarter than us because we.
What? Yeah,
that one stand. Yeah,
he was definitely coming in off the private.
Oh yeah. Well, I'm talking about the one closer to the parking lot.
Oh right, yeah. So like that's because there's just one part that's just almost even like impossible to walk through, let alone drag a deer through it.
Oh, it was awful.
And like it about killed us, and we're not. I'm not doing it again unless we figure out a better way to do it.
Yeah.
And I think we're gonna have to use a boat or something. But like right where that starts is where like one of the only other stands that we saw.
You hit the spot and it looks pretty good, and you're like, I'm gonna go in there because it's still a pretty nasty walk.
Yeah.
And it was like, it was freezing and unthawing all the time, and
so the top layer was mud, and then under that was ice.
So it was just slick everywhere.
Yeah.
But I hunted this place once. And I hunted in the morning and the afternoon to give the area kind of an idea. And in the morning, I really didn't give it that good of a go because I went in there blind. So it took me, I didn't really know I was doing it. It was ridiculously loud to walk through. So we kind of went slow for too long. And you walk a mile and a half back, it was like 8 o'clock before we got to a spot where I'm like, okay, this starts to look good. Sprink. Technical difficulties. We had a dog, but it started looking good, and we saw some does, And I'm like, okay, this looks pretty good, but it's like 8:30, you know, like most of the buck movement is going to be the chances of seeing a buck are fairly slim. I saw a spike. He's a big mounter spike. He's about 2 inches, but
big Missouri 11-pointer.
But yeah, so I'm like, I really like the looks of this place. This place has got to be good. And so for the afternoon, we went back in there. And I was going back and forth that day between going there and taking up to the area that you hunted. But I'm like, I got to give this place a better chance. So we went back in there.
Like what we talked about.
And I saw 4 does, and we saw a doe and a fawn that I ended up almost had to get up and just get her to run off because she kept wanting to come to where I was at, like past me. There's like a trail like 5 yards from me because you might as well set up close with the gun, right? And so she was trying to come down this trail, and she kept seeing us. And so every time she was about to blow, I wave my hand quick because in my mind, if a deer blows, I don't really like that. So I want to get him. I want him to leave. So she started to blow, and I waved my hand. She'd run off. Then she'd come back like, "What the heck was that?" And I'm like, "I'm still here." and so she'd come back, and then she blew once, and I got up and leave. And I'm like, I just probably look like an idiot. If
I just shoot her.
Yeah, I was like, I'm at this point where I was like, if this wasn't a 1.5-mile drag, I'd shoot this doe and I'd move on. But it's like, no, I don't want to make that drag. So she finally worked off. But it was a really good area. So yesterday we decided to go back in, and our plan was to hunt the morning, and then we've never done this, but try to do some wind bumping tactics.
Just mini pushes.
With 2 guys, which is harder than we thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
And we ended up getting in there, and we saw, I'm not even kidding you, 20 to 30 deer in this big group on the bottom, and they ended up spooking off because they got our wind. And then another, what was that, 100 yards away, there was more deer that we heard running around, a smaller group. And we're like, and I remember you said that you were talking, man, I don't really know how good this place is going to be, if we already spooked.
For the pushes, because they were all coming back from this ag source, and we knew they were going to be doing that, and then they were crossing the marsh and then going into the side that we were on to bed down for the day, as I assumed what they were doing. And we knew that going into it. But then you spooked 40 deer.
It's how many more are in there?
You spooked 40 deer, trying to get to the bedding areas that you're about to go push. And then you're like, are there any deer in there? How many more deer could there be? When they could be. And I was like, well, there should be deer in there. They could just be coming from the other side. Or bucks could definitely be in there and had just already gone through.
Oh, yeah.
From in the morning. So I was like, well, we'll give it a shot. And then just briefly, why we picked that area over the spot, I killed my buck that day too.
Because we really don't think anybody's been in there.
Yeah, and it set up really good for what we were planning on doing. It's a big bull, so we knew that if we wanted to try this wind bumping tactic,
naturally
that was the place to try it. It seemed like that's the only place. Well, I mean not the only, but the spots that we wanted to hunt to where we could go in and expect good natural movement in the morning, and then try to control the deer movement a little bit, the way it sets up the habitat. That was the place to go.
Because in my mind, I mean, we've never done it, but if I bump a deer, I usually see him go kind of downhill.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, that was kind of our plan. So you went out and you started, go through your bumping tactic. Yeah,
so 9, I think we were well, I don't know, there could be more natural movement, but we might as well get started. We got a long day, and we could wind bump or light push this area all day and not even do the whole thing. So I was like, might as well get started. So I went to this first they're all just kind of big ridges, and a lot of them have really brushy, and then they fall down to the marsh. It's the way this place sets up, and the whole thing's surrounded by fields. So I knew those deer were going to be on those ridges, so I hit the first one. I backtracked a little bit, left him where he was, and we were expecting these deer to funnel down, what he was saying, and then kind of go on the edge of this marsh, and he'd get an easy shot at him. And so I started bumping, and when you're doing, we'd never done it like we said, and I mean, you're doing like these light pushes with just like one person. It is hard to control the deer movement. Like I learned that really quick. I didn't know because I kind of just thought, well, I'll just walk the top and kind of do half circles around them, just getting closer and closer, and then they should all pile downhill. It should be easy, right? But it turns out when you do that, the deer run straight away from you, which like makes sense in hindsight. Yeah. Like obviously the deer are gonna run away from you. Like you could get like some people like say like mature bucks will hold tight and escape out the back. I didn't have that happen yesterday, but basically I was finding that all these deer were like sticking in the timber and they weren't going down into this marsh like we thought they were. They were just following the timber, and this marsh kind of necks up and then the fields, and they were just going from ridge to ridge in this timber, and I couldn't get them to come down in front of Trevor. I got there was one doe that came down in front of you out of like the 10 deer that I saw in this first bedding area. So I immediately knew we had to make an adjustment. All they did was go to the next ridge, so I was like, they're still there. And like, they hadn't been pressured at all. Like I could have shot a couple of does out of their beds. It was kind of weird, but like, and so I thought about just having you like
just
like
walk,
still hunting.
just walk, yeah. And I thought about doing that too.
And I mean, I wasn't even trying to be like we didn't want the deer running Mach 10 by you,
right?
But I quickly found like I had to do a little bit of movement, and like to get these deer up and like moving. Like I was gonna have to get them moving because they were holding like pretty tight, and if I was just going light, they'd just run 10 yards and stop. At least the does. So I was like, I was trying to get them up and moving a little bit. So I went back to Trevor and I was like, all right, we're gonna have to adjust. I sent him up the marsh a long ways, and we were just gonna push like 4 ridges at once and
hope like nothing just dropped. And it could have
just hope nothing dropped down in the marsh. I was gonna do my best to contain it. With only one person, that's pretty hard. But after like seeing what the deer were doing, I knew that they'd probably weren't going to.
And I think like there's a reason why for that though, because when I was walking up there, I'm like, there's a reason why that they're not going down, because the further up we go, the more like brushier. But there was a main creek that was running there that I don't think they were wanting to cross.
Yeah, they only crossed in a couple of places down there in the main part. Like, going into it, I thought it was going to be, like, tall enough and have enough cover that they'd be okay with going down in there. And then, like, but it turns out, like, after, like, the snow and stuff, like, a lot of that was matted down. So it was, I mean, it would have been almost like them running through an open field, and they want to avoid that if they can. So they were just sticking into the ridges. So decided to get you down in these ridges, about 4 ridges away, I think it was. Send you all the way up there, almost to the end of this public land. And we were going to try to push a lot of it at once because, well, we could have done like each ridge one at a time, but
deer were escaping further up, because when you were just starting your movement, I got up there and there was deer that were up there and they were already like
they were already gone, and like it didn't neck down as much. And if we would have done like one ridge at a time, those deer would have been moving a lot faster because I had just bumped them like, I don't know, 150 yards away.
Right.
Whereas we set you up way down the drainage a little bit, and I started kind of just making these pushes, and I would do like each ridge in a series of 2 or 3 pushes, and because I was again trying to do the half circles, and it wasn't working to get them to move towards Trevor. They were just moving back and forth. So I started pushing. I'd push like the bottom side of the ridge, and then they'd run, and then or I'd spook like one buck or one deer or something, and then I'd backtrack, go down the ridge, and then do the same thing, and then backtrack, and then do the same thing, but I had to be moving towards him. And eventually, like that first ridge, I think I got another like 5 deer up, and then I think the deer that I had spooked earlier were kind of already through there.
It's a long ways away too, like it's like 200, 300 yards away
from
where you were probably first starting,
right?
You know?
For sure. And so he finally got set up. And I had done this first ridge. I'd already basically started because I figured he was getting close, and I knew they'd be slowing down by the time they got way up there. So then I finally, on that first ridge too, I spooked a buck, or I jumped a buck that I knew he would probably shoot. I didn't get a good look at him, but
you saw antlers.
One of the antlers flashed in the sun, and I'm like, big buck. I'm like,
put her down.
Going at you, Trev. And so I jumped him. I knew, and he was reading the script. He went up to the next ridge, and I heard him stop. So I was like, okay, it's nice and controlled still. We don't want to shoot at running deer. And so then I went back and bumped more deer off that ridge. And I think they had all moved off at that time. And I was starting to cross down and get closer to you and do the next ridge. And I heard him shoot. And so like I guess you can.
Yeah. So when I first got there, there was this little like fork. He was kind of moving pretty quick, and then he kind of stopped, and I was trying to get him on video, and I couldn't really get him. He kind of worked his way off. Then I had a doe and a fawn come in the same spot, and I was kind of like further down. I'm like, yeah, I'm seeing all these deer going here. I think all these deer are going to want to stay up high, but I still want to be in an area where I can kind of see the marsh still if a buck drops down low off this ridge, because this is a big, long, rolling ridge. And I was kind of at the point of it where I was going to hit kind of the bottom. So I'm sitting there, and it was at the point of the day where you could start to hear the deer again, walking around and moving. And so I heard something, and I'm like, I might as well get ready. I'm sitting on a log. I got the camera in front of me, and I'm like, this is going to be really hard to self-film if a deer's coming in. And sure enough, I'm hearing something running. I'm like, that's a deer coming. So I kind of got ready, got sitting here, and all of a sudden I see tines jumping, coming through, and there's this deer barreling straight at me, and it's a buck. And so I'm like, crap, this deer's coming in, and he's coming in hot. Like, he's almost full bore.
Not quite as controlled as we wanted it to.
Right, he's coming full bore, but I wasn't going to shoot him unless I could get him to stop. Because if some of you don't know, I'm not the best with a gun. That's before our bear hunt this year, I'm going to take a lot of time and target shoot, because out there it's not a good place to miss or wound anything. And so I don't want to shoot anything that I'm not comfortable doing, because I don't know why I've always been bad shooting a gun, other than I've jerked the trigger and I've kind of worked towards away from that. But I want to make sure if we're doing these, either the deer was kind of walking slow and I could either get him to stop, or it was like he was just kind of just meandering and not moving too fast, So he was running full bore, and I'm like, if I'm going to shoot this deer, I don't even have time to even touch the camera. I had no time to even touch the camera. So I'm like, buck. And, you get excited, and it's happening this fast. And I just cocked it, and I went, meh, and he stopped like 35 yards away from me. And he just went from running full speed to just stopped. And I'm like, that's never happened a day in my life.
Like, because, like, you say he's running full bore, but, like, so that's not what we were going for. But it was controlled, like, enough that we were able to stop.
And I think partially, too, was because I was sitting on, like, a fallen over log, and I was, like, totally silhouetted. So he was running, he was moving, and I think what helped him stop was I went, meh, and he was already, like, coming down my way, but it made him realize that there was somebody right there. And he was like,
oh, crap.
Oh, no. And he froze.
Like,
and
just
so then,
probably, like, a pretty, like, short amount of time, like I bet it felt long, like
when it was happening.
It's like time freezes, right?
Right.
When a pheasant flushes, it's like you feel like everything's going in slow motion, but like really, I bet it was just like that.
It was fast.
I bet you had him. Like,
yeah, and I wish I would have had the camera on and recording just so you can hear how it all happened. But I mean, I didn't even have time to even reach down and touch the camera, and I just remember saying "Meh," and put it in. He was kind of quartering toward me, like mostly a frontal shot. And I'm not afraid to take frontal shots. I know a lot of people are. Sure. I mean, we shoot elk frontal shot, dead shot, and 2 elk with a bow for frontal shots.
Yeah, all died in 60 yards. I mean, it's scenario based, like
right,
like gun, bow, definitely a different scenario.
If you're shooting light arrows,
how far they are for sure.
Yeah,
and so like it's just.
So at that point, it was like, okay, I'll take this shot. I think if I put it at the right spot, I'm gonna shoot it. So I pulled up, and he stopped, and he was dead still.
Like 30, 35 yards.
35 yards.
With a muzzleloader.
Yeah, with a muzzleloader. So then I'm there, crosshair is on, and boom, and all of a sudden this deer buckles and he piles up, and I'm like, did that really just happen? And I remember because I always told, like Dad said, so it's that deep and it's that bad of a drag out, right? And I said, yeah, honestly, I really don't want to drag a deer out of that place unless it's a really big buck. So then as I saw him, because, when you see a buck, like, and when he's looking, like, straight on running, you're like, oh, he's a good buck, know? Like, he's coming in, it's like, yeah, he's going to be a good buck. And I shoot him, and all of a sudden I see him turn, and he starts falling. I'm like, oh no, he's not near as big as I thought, and this is going to be a long day. So it's kind of like,
instant ground shrinkage.
Yeah, instant ground shrinkage. I mean, there's nothing wrong with shooting small deer and anything. And I mean, I had more fun on like that hunt than I have in years of hunting, like back in our Missouri property and stuff. And it's like, there's nothing wrong with shooting small deer, but in my mind was like it was so exciting and so exhilarating. Like in the moment, it's like, yeah, let's do this, blah blah blah.
And then
you do it, and then instantly it was remembering what we had to do after this deer hit the ground, because it was an all day effort to get that deer out of there. It was. We mapped it when we got back, and it said it was like 1.55, but I still think it was longer than that. I still think, like, if you got on the ground, it was close to, like,
for sure
1.75 or something. Mm-hmm. And I thought it was 2 miles back there, and it was rough. It was the worst drag out I've ever been a part of. It took us...
probably the worst I've been a part of, too. It was a little bit better than mine because you had 2 people, and...
Yeah.
It was
in the deer cart, yeah.
But, like... I don't know. They were both bad. Real bad.
I mean...
Like, you don't want to do them again.
Yeah, and I don't think... We're not doing that drag out again until we have a better plan. We're either going to try to get, access from surrounding landowners to see if either, 1, we can drag deer out if we do get something, or 2, if we can use it to access. I think until then, or, like... You could probably access this by, like, a small boat or something through that creek, but it was frozen, so we couldn't. And you couldn't. And the problem is everything was thawing and then refreezing at night, so the ice wasn't thick at all. You couldn't walk on it.
Right.
So it was kind of like a problem. You really use a boat to get in there because it was going to make a bunch of noise. You couldn't walk on it, so you had to go around it, and so. It was just ridiculous. It was during bow season. I think if we go in there using a boat or accessing it by a different way, I think it's going to be a killer spot. For sure. And I'm actually like really excited about next fall, and I can't wait for October 1st. So I think we learned a lot about that, but overall that drag out was not fun.
No, but got a buck. It's a lot better than getting skunked, not getting one.
Yeah. I would have definitely not gotten a...
I would have shot him for sure.
No, I know. I'm not saying that. I'm saying I definitely would not have probably gotten a buck at all this season. Just because going back and looking at all of our hunts, I saw that one big buck that very first day, and then a couple days later in a new spot we saw forks, which I didn't really want to haul a fork out. But then I didn't see a single buck for the rest of the time, and the chances of me seeing a buck either yesterday afternoon, natural movement, or this morning, natural movement.
Right. So you had an afternoon hunt left and a morning hunt left, and then that was it. Yeah. So if you would have not shot him, the chances of you getting a buck and filling your tag, like you should. Right. I think if you have a tag, you should shoot something. That's just kind of what I think. So, the chances of you getting another opportunity after hunting a whole season or a whole muzzleloader season. And only seeing one other buck, it's pretty slim that he's going to get another opportunity.
So overall, it was a bunch of fun getting out there and kind of doing a different tactic and strategy of hunting, you know. And
learned a lot.
We have nothing against people that go out and they do pushes and whatnot. It's
for sure.
Like a tradition that people do, and we talked about it in the video yesterday.
And like what I said, good way to get deer moving. It's a good way to put meat in the freezer and stuff, and that's if you want to see deer and have a fast action, that's the way to do it.
Yeah.
But we don't want to have to shoot at running deer. We don't want to have to put ourselves in that situation.
We don't want to wound deer. That's our biggest thing.
Yeah. So and a lot of people there's some pushers that'll they're just dead eyes and they can hit deer on the run easy.
Right.
But we're not gonna do that. So
I'm not a dead eye, and
so we don't condemn that at all. We're all on the same team. All hunters are on the same team, but we've never done that strategy. So it was good to do a mini version of that and try something new and have fun doing it.
It's cool to start hunting with a gun again, because we hunted for so long or whatever, and we kind of were zoned in on that for a while. But we obviously gun hunted, but before it was always you have strict rules with a gun, blah blah blah. We thought it was better with extended range and not as But it's kind of got to the point where just have fun again, And I think a lot of people miss that, and there's niches in hunting where it's I bow hunt, I don't gun hunt at all. I'm still gonna use my bow, and And I don't want to say it's like the better people have like the better than you aspect, but it's kind of like one team against another.
No, I don't think it's like the better than you aspect. I just think it's people like, because like if you're hunting like over like a huge food source with a muzzleloader, and like you got like a 300-yard range, like chances are like you can probably get something. And so,
Watch
like,
out.
So like people that have like been there, done that a bunch of times. I'm sure it's just like, well, I want to make this a little harder on myself, and I want to use a bow. So I don't think it's like a better than you mentality. I just think it's people trying to just constantly get better. Really.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm just saying is I don't want people to have like too many niches, or like we're the bow team, we're the gun team. You know, it's like hunting is on the same team. You know, and I think with like our goal for 2019 is just to get more people out and hunt and try to just get more people in the sport, because tag sales are dropping in every state, and that's a big problem. So more people are getting out of the sport of hunting than that are coming into it. And I think that this is a time where everybody has to just kind of step up to the plate and kind of just push people getting out in the field. Not really. I mean, we're going to still try to shoot big deer on our private property. We're still going to try to manage for like big deer in public land.
We just like hunting big deer too, but also like get out there, use the public.
And if something's fun, you know, like
shoot whatever you want.
Right.
Make it fun for sure.
Yeah, keep it fun, because if it's not fun anymore, then you're not gonna do it. So I think with that, we'll just kind of end it up there. Just kind of keep getting people into the sport of hunting, take somebody out there new. And I think we're going to try to have some more during the off season here. I know you're still taking Jessie out, trying to get her first year.
Yep, a couple more days.
Yep, so hopefully you get some there. And in the off season here, our plan is to kind of have some videos, how to get into bow hunting, how to get into hunting, what you actually need, because I think and we talked about this yesterday, there's a large disconnect of what you actually need to get started in hunting, and like it can be a huge financial burden if you think you got to have.
Jessie said, like, I got a bunch of old stuff that she's wearing right now from when I was a kid, but if she didn't have that, like, she can't afford to go buy like thousands of dollars worth of gear. So like, we want to like make a series, or eventually make a series on how you can start out,
like what you actually need, what we would recommend and stuff, because like you don't need to go spend $1,200 for a bow that you put all your stuff on, dude. You don't need to spend all the money on that to get started in bow hunting. Right. You don't need thousands of dollars worth of Sitka to go hunting.
Like, it's good stuff.
I mean, it's nice. It works if you're really into the sport. Then I mean, it made me want to stay out longer, and it helped. But we didn't grow up using that stuff.
No, go to Gander Mountain and go
to Walmart, pick up camo jeans.
Don't even wear camo.
Yeah. The best camo is staying still.
Yeah, for sure.
And we're big believers in that. And so I just kind of, we went off into a rabbit hole there. But
anyway, hopefully
we're gonna have a lot of good stuff coming. Hopefully, so hopefully
this was a helpful podcast, and you guys enjoyed hearing about our late season muzzleloader experiences and what we learned and what our strategy was. And that's kind of, I guess that's what the topic was. So
yeah, all our other podcasts can be found on the Modern Hunter podcast, which will be linked below. I want to try to get more people to listen to that, so then we decide to do it or not.
So we're not talking to ourselves.
Yeah, so we're not talking to ourselves. But I like the idea of doing these video podcasts, because I think it's going to be a good way to get our YouTube people more involved and hopefully push more to our podcasting. So yeah, that's enough blabbing for the day. Thanks everybody for tuning in, and if you guys are new, please subscribe, like the video, and we'll see everybody in the next one. Peace. Keep hunting deers.